specific contexts and concerns. We also have a tea and coffee counter at the back. We won't be having a separate break for that, but please feel free to help yourselves to that anytime. Our first masterclass is going to be held by our very own Dr. Pramod Verma. He's the ex-chief architect of Aadhaar and the India Stack, as well as the CTO of Ek Step Foundation, the co-chair at the Center for Digital Public Infrastructure, and the co-founder of FIDE.
Good morning. Fantastic to so many of my friends. Hello, everyone. Lovely to see all of you here. Fantastic to address you. And you thought it's just a casual visit, didn't you? Until professor told you that 18 months you're going to be locked into a program. You're going to get a lot of homework, by the way. This is an academic institution. We have to give you homework. Anyway, so it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be real purpose of this, unlike many other conferences, is to put all of you journey through an implementation of your own and designing your own. Because at the end of the day, that discovery phase is very, very key for you to believe that something can be done, and there's a method that madness. There are many reusable elements from the learning, and this is the first batch, so make sure that all of you introduce. This is like your first day in college, okay? You're all looking around and saying, okay, I know some of you, but I don't know all of you. But 18 months you're going to be there. This is the first cohort that's going to come out with proper certification and all that thing. So it'll be very, very key for us to be able to exchange that experience, abstract that experience, and reapply that to your context. That's essence. That's a reason why you're all here. So I'm going to take a little bit of time, walk you through few of the large DPI in the areas of identity, G2P credentials, payment area. Payment, we have another session tomorrow. We have multiple sessions following up today. And we have Vijay as well. He was a principal architect at the identity program as well with me. So you have all the expertise in this room you can get. One of the things we should do, and I hope I see that happening, is that there are post-its and all digital notes, okay, in front of your computer. Hopefully you're not checking email. It's okay. If you're bored, you can check email. But otherwise, please write down. I think our real purpose is to become a practitioner and not just listen. So I think it is important that we keep aside, right, at least some good time in each session for us to be able to actually discuss. And what do you discuss? Discuss questions like choice, questions like how did you even manage to get rollout happening? The Nigeria question about how did you get government officers to come together, or market questions. Our friend was saying, how does the market innovate on top of such DPI? Because not every time government can keep innovating continuously. You need NGO ecosystems, civil society ecosystem, and a market ecosystem to also start leveraging that. So I think a lot of these questions will come up. So two types of questions you can really look at. One, how did you do? How did you do something? Just that you can actually start, maybe that works, maybe it doesn't work in our country, and you can start figuring out, right, your pattern. And second, the principles, very, very key. It's not the exact feature that you are interested in other countries. It's a principle that comes out of it. What key principle that was applied that really worked well for that experience? Does that principle apply to you? And if that principle, so look for abstracting principles and abstracting how did you do so that you can also figure out in your context. Okay, given that basis, now I think it's supposed to move. You are moving. Okay, it's one of those things. Okay, so I'll start with a very simple context. In 2009, our ID project, that's when we started our journey. We had telecommunication before that, infrastructure, 2G, primarily 2G infrastructure. We had gone through feature phone revolution. But in 90s, India had no phones at all. Nobody had phones. We had to wait for 10 years to get a phone connection. And then in 2000, we started, at least telecom network took off, and we were on feature phone, the Nokia revolution as we call it. India was full of Nokia phones, quite affordable. But what was daunting in 2009 is when we start looking at this, India's scale and diversity is like a continent. Okay, it is not like a uniform country. India is Bangalore, where you are right now. We speak 109 languages actively. Okay, is that like crazy? You talked about one official language, but so many different languages. Now, if you have that many language diversity, cultural diversity, and the food, about 150 kilometers, you move out, you will see the culture starting to change. Food, clothes, the weather, everything. So, there's so much of those elements that come into when you start rolling out a project to be able to, and of course, financial disparity. 6%. We have gone to 8% of country registered in the income tax, actually 4% or 5% paying income tax. That's what we have in the whole country. But we actually have, these are all official languages, 22 languages, but we do have GST, which actually has unified our service tax, goods and services tax. Okay, so it's one of those things that doesn't work. Okay, eventually works, I think. Yeah. So this is when we started with. 2009, I was the chief architect of Aadhaar, and I was looking at this question. I've never done biometric ID. I was in the industry. I quit industry and volunteered to this project. And we were asked to say, okay, give identity for 1.4 billion people, then 1.3 billion people. And then we asked, what does biometric identity even mean? Because we don't have birth certificate. 40% of India doesn't have birth certificate, birth registration. So if you have to really get people in the inclusive system, but the first thing that was given to me is that you will not be able to do it. Actually, people very, very clearly, even the top scientists, top technologists told us, you will not be able to do a 1.3 billion because it will be extremely costly for you to be able to do. And the cost, while it is theoretically possible, it will be unviable financially. And that's something is going on here. Anyway, I am speaking. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. So you have to tell me what the next slides are. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. The next one. Okay. Oh, now it came up. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. So some lose contact or something. You just track it. Okay. Come here. Thanks. So what did we end up with though? Today we have ended up with this. So from impossible to do, you have no idea how you're going to do. This is crazy. You shouldn't be doing it in 2009 to 1.38 billion people. And it took only 5.5 years to get to 1 billion people, by the way. And after that, the long tail gets harder and harder and harder and harder, right? And 1.38 billion today, we have very, very heavy usage. That's a good usage metrics. Usage is what matters on any DPI. Any DPI you're building, by the way. If your metrics is supply side metrics, that means issue identity kind of metrics, you're already missing the point. Because you will issue identity, nobody will use it. So you have to really question the demand side metrics you need. Demand side is what will people do with that? And how do you measure that impact, right? So authentication, everyday usage, how many bank accounts got opened through that ID? Those should be the metrics. Supply side metrics are almost always the trap government projects fall into. Extremely common. Because that's, as a department, ID department, you will say, I'm asked to issue ID, I'll issue ID. I'm not in control of banking, I'm not in control of agriculture, I'm not in control of anything else. What else can I do? But when we did Aadhaar, we took a very different perspective. We said we will not, by the time we are 10% of ID issuance in the country, we would have unlocked at least one demand side use case. 10%. By the time we got to 10%, actually 7-8% in the country, we started opening bank accounts using this. What's called a no-frill account. We convinced the central bank to say, nobody has bank account. Anyway, it's your care. You care about opening bank account. Why don't you open a bank account? But don't give them ATM card, credit card or checkbooks. Don't do anything complicated. Simply open a bank account. Even you can even put amount limit if you want. Because poor people is not that they're going to put $1 million there, right? So it's okay. Get started. And that's how we got started. Then we got two programs. two programs, government program, G2P, government benefits program, convinced them to do a pilot to say, if you use this Aadhaar to actually do, can you deduplicate your beneficiary and give money? Simple, small starting, but always start in demand side. And that's one learning that we can always take out. And this is today extremely used, 80 to 90 million authentications every day we do, because the scale is very large. Okay, next one. Okay, so really, Aadhaar was, and I'll talk about a little more, but it was only 4 attributes in our identity. And you will be again, you know how many times in the last 10 years, we have actually told identity systems around the world, the more data you capture, the more difficulty you're going to get in terms of dealing with privacy, dealing with correctness of that data, because the more data you have to now make sure the data is correct in your database. And most importantly, it also gets into turf war. The more data you capture, health data, income data, some department is going to get pissed off with you as an ID provider. Because you'll say, well, it's not your job, it's my job, right? To collect health data or income data and so on. Why are you doing? Or education data, the education department will say, why are you doing? So the minimalism helped convince other departments, convinced other stakeholders that we are not walking into your turf. It had 4 attributes, name, date of birth, gender, address. What else can you have? And photograph, of course, and that's it. Keeping minimalism, it was not a technology architecture problem alone. It was one of the most brilliant decisions Aadhaar guys made, because nobody felt it as an attack on them. Everybody felt, oh, okay, this is useful because I can now use it to open a bank account, or I can use it in my agriculture department database, because you are not capturing any agriculture data. You are not doing anything to do with agriculture, thankfully, and hence you are only strengthening me. You are not competing with me. Okay, this was very, very key decision. Then, second part, de-link status and purpose. Status was a very tricky, I know many countries won't be able to do it. Status is about citizenship status. India, we still don't have a citizenship register. Because Indian continent with 4,000 whatever years of history, it's very messy. And it's very, very sensitive, very touchy subject. So, our identity program, we consciously made that call, saying that we will build a citizenship register later. But anybody who is hanging around, human being hanging around in this country, anyway need an ID, no? Let's start with it. So it was a let's start with a necessary condition, but not sufficient argument. Because some of these are very key for you to get through your discussions, okay? You can't get through the discussion in your country. So this was an important decision we made. Start with necessary condition, not sufficient. So we'll add status later, we said. Okay. I don't know when we'll add status in India. It's very difficult to add citizenship status, but one of these days we might do it. But we still gave. So we gave, if you are a resident in this country, we will get an ID. And we gave ID to everyone. So, second, purpose. Very most dangerous things you normally end up designing more and more information into it. Bank account details or other details like purpose of usage. We kept purpose completely out. Why is it important? Goes back to that tangram example professor was telling you. Context free or context insensitive. That means identity was not completely context unaware. It didn't care whether identity was used by a private company or a hotel to check you into a hotel. I don't care. Identity didn't care. Identity simply ensure that individual can make an identity claim saying, I am who I am. And he can say, yes, that identity is correct. Nothing more. And that also helped us in second largest Supreme Court debate in the history of independence India. Identity project. Privacy debate was the second longest in the Supreme Court history. And we successfully came out because of the design of this privacy and minimalism. And this side, another thing, extremely tempting. We also were tempted In 2009, there was a committee, and the committee started with about whether it was a minimum, they started with 16 attributes, and they were adding more, right, in that committee, saying, no, 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 while we are going to enroll 1 billion people, why would you not ask for a few more things? Genuinely, it's not for anything bad. It's not that we were trying to build a surveillance system or something. But you're going to actually get everybody to stand in line. 1 billion people going to stand in line. 3 more fields and all won't harm, no. What is a big deal? Add few more meals, whether you have a proper house, whether you have a cow, whether how much you have studied, why not? Because you can actually genuinely help. But that temptation was absolutely against DPI principles. Because that would have, every department would have descended on us. So immediately, okay, and killed this project. Second, privacy, we would have been horribly failed in privacy debate and civil society going up in arms. And third, we could not have kept that data up to date. So many fields. There is no way identity program system can keep it up. If the data is not up to date, what is the use of collecting one-time data? Look at demand side use case. If I take this data and use it somewhere, if the data is stale, outdated, your data, your identity project will become useless. You will say, that data is not used, it's not up to date, it's outdated. So we were very, very, very conscious about whatever we are collecting, we must collect and keep it up to date. And to keep it up to date, we have to make it useful every day. If people use it every day, they will keep it up to date, not by mandate. UIDAI, the authority, never mandated me from updating my address. We never mandated anything. But I go and update because it's in my interest to update it. So really incentives have to be shifted to the individual's incentive. That means the ID holder, will the ID holder have an everyday incentive to keep it up to date? And that was very, very important ask for us to actually ask as well. And the other one is enrollment, or inclusion. Inclusion argument is used. The more data fields you ask, the less people will get in. Or they will fake the data. There's only 2 things going to happen. Impossible to get so many fields actually correct from poor people. Very, very vulnerable people. So we even removed parent, father, mother. Think about it. We ask ourselves question, what happens to orphans? Because when a government form says, show, parent, you better show some parent, no? What will they do? They'll show random parents. They'll say, whoever next to him, he'll say parent. This is what is going to happen. Because at scale, this is what all our countries, you're all developing countries, all of us know exactly what nonsense is going to happen on the ground. Some random people will become parents. Right? So it is very, very key. We looked for inclusion, and minimalism worked for inclusion, very interestingly. Not only for privacy, not only for turf war problem, it also helped the inclusion problem. And biometric, one of the reasons people ask me, why did you include iris into that? Only fingerprint would have worked. Now, 2 things. One, we had a formal committee, very formal committee debating scientifically, with scientific proof and background, with scientific biometric experts from around the world joining at that time, to prove, first of all, biometric based identity can work for 1 billion. That itself there was no proof ever, right? Second, why do you need multi-modal biometrics? And the argument for multi-modal biometric was accuracy and inclusion. One point, if you are going to deduplicate 1 billion people, you will need not just fingerprint, because many, many people won't have fingerprint capturable well. Okay? So what will happen? Either they'll get excluded because they'll say, oh, you can't capture it, come back again. I can't help you. All that thing will happen. Leprosy patients, for example, we have a lot, especially previous generation. Now we are pretty well taken care. But it was not the case. So we have to worry about inclusion. So we made an argument on inclusion to say 2 biometric at least, so that we can have a backup for people to be able to, people who have fingerprint can't be captured or fingers are missing. At least the alternate biometrics works for them, right? This is very key. But now with photograph, it's actually photo technology has improved a lot with AI, okay, facial deduplication, facial technologies have improved tremendously. So for a smaller population, 30 million, 100 million, you might be able to actually quite well do with face and fingerprint. You may not need iris at all. But for 1 billion people, we had to look at it, but it also acted as inclusion. And we also allowed OTP, one-time pin on smart feature phone, because by then we had already had Nokia effect and the 2G effect. SMS was everywhere, missed call was everywhere, as India does. And so I think OTP was pretty interesting for us to do. And so that biometric exception, when somebody goes and authenticate, they can actually, people say, oh, if a biometric is weak, I can combine that with OTP and become a two-factor authentication suddenly and strengthen the authentication, even if my fingerprint is weak, especially older people with pension. We had this issue. Okay, their face is very strong. By the way, what we're recognizing is that facial authentication work really well for older people because their structures are all well set. So it really works well. But we didn't have it then. So we had to fall back on OTP. And then, of course, using ecosystem as a framework for both demand and supply. So one of the things we did, and I have some, next slide I think I have the numbers, is that we used ecosystem as a lever. First instinct on identity was to set up a 1,200 people organization. That was a proposal. And we ended up with 150 people. We said, why do we need 1,200 people in the organization? If we can leverage the existing ecosystem. Why is it critical to leverage ecosystem? Because in our diversity and language context, cultural, religious, financial context, you need local ecosystem to actually understand the cultural context for them and actually able to help. So we said enrollment, enrolling people cannot be done from a central command and control style. We cannot do from sitting in Delhi. So what did we do? We had a large ecosystem, trained, certified, empaneled, price discovered. Think about it, because government project, we can't be random about it. So we had a large ecosystem of local entrepreneurs. We know how many, we had 400,000 eventually youngsters from the villages trained and certified to become an operator. And every time they enroll an Aadhaar person into the Aadhaar system, they would, that agency would get 40 rupees, half a dollar. That's how the price discovery was at scale. Very, very interesting. Two things happened. One, we did ecosystem. That means organization, central command and control structure went away to much more federated, culturally context environment. Second, we created a lot of local jobs. Very interesting. Nobody speaks about it. Now, how many 400,000 people trained and certified and making money in the village? That was good, right? And second, the third one, very, very importantly, is also that we shifted into an outcome-based payment. Outcome. We did not pay them upfront. They enrolled us. Every time they would enroll an Aadhaar number, we would pay them half a dollar. So they were interested in enrolling more people faster, because then only they can get more money, right? If you give upfront money, they may not do anything. It's government money, very difficult to track, right? So we incentivize the private ecosystem and including bank agents, everybody. They were all enrolling people because the more you enroll, the more money you get, which is good. We enroll. And everything was software was standardized, technology was standardized, process was standardized, it was certified and empaneled. So that was important as well. And this is a number. 200 people, less than 200 people in the organization. Entire identity project. 1 billion people we reached in 5.5 years. With just 200 people, Vijay, we had 5 people in the tech and then 40 people in the tech vendor ecosystem. That means about 45, 50 people in the tech team out of the 200. Remaining was bureaucrats, officials, policy folks to do, all the approvals and all that thing. 2,000 enrollment and device providers like MOSIP, if you walk around, you will see them. 40,000 stations, 200,000 became 400,000 towards the end, enrollment operator, trained and certified. We did 1 million, we targeted 1 million enrollments every day. And we were doing 1.5 million enrollments every day, million, across the country because it was completely federated. We gave cookie cutter software, local agencies, they were incentivized to enroll people and they would enroll in a standard way and every time they enroll they get money. So, it was very interesting methodology. And then now we obviously using authentication as well. Okay, next one. Yeah. And it was, this is very key part of DPI thinking. That others highlighted is the essence of DPI thinking. There was nothing in the identity system that we said our job is to issue identity. We said our job is to make sure identity is used every day. That requires policy updates as well as authentication and electronic KYC. Authentication was a yes or no, one API call, application programming interface call, regional offices and so on. And then of course we had existing laws like IT Act and then draft data protection. Now we have actually passed our privacy bill as well. So India has a privacy bill also, okay? And then most asked question around the world, including India, that was the one which was taken as a Supreme Court, by the way, in India, in the debate. Are you building a surveillance system, right? And we better answer it. Better answer success, because if you want sustenance of this project, it's not a temporary slap and move on. You better have an answer. And the beautiful thing was everything we had designed in, the minimalism I talk about, purpose delinking, all that came into handy for us. And that's why we said minimalism of data capture, no tracking. That means we do not capture location whatsoever. Location where you are authenticating. If you go to a bank and authenticate in that location, ID system doesn't know. Purposely didn't capture. And we said, I don't care how you're using it. It's your ID. It's not my ID. It's your ID. You can use the way you want it to use, right? So it was very, very important that we don't create tracking. We also had virtual ID, which was a fungible use and throw ID on top of it, which came in handy quite a lot. And then of course authentication was always done with consent. There was no API opened up to government department. Even if it is government department, lot of demand, by the way. There were a lot of demand initially saying, for government to government, can we look up the database? We said, no such lookup. Zero. And we actually said, it's not our data. You know what was this actual statement? UIDAI is a custodian of your data. If you are the ID holder, we are just a custodian, digitally representing it, attesting it, giving you a number. It's not my data. It's your data. And if somebody wants to see your data, your consent is needed. Now with the data protection privacy bill, consent is mandatory. Then consent was not there in India that much. So, but we had to debate it. But that came in handy. And of course, this is very interesting. Data retention. Data retention is going to be a lot of key questions asked. How long are you keeping? What kind of data? Data is the most sensitive. So capture less data, don't keep it. It's like one of those things, right? It even helps cybersecurity, by the way. It's like if you have money, you have to worry about getting stolen. If you have no money, nobody can steal you, right? So it's one of those arguments. If you don't even have data, what are you going to steal? I don't have the data, right? We have so little data that nothing much to steal. So it's a very powerful cybersecurity argument as well when we make it, okay? And that's what we need for data. By the way, other data, Vijay can talk about it later as well. It was at rest. Entire data at rest means on the disk, is always encrypted in other system. Even internal officers and database administrators cannot see it. Our own administrators cannot see. Our own officers can't see. When an officer looks up for any support purpose, sometimes people come, my Aadhaar didn't come. Each of them is audited. What did you look up? And that audit is available to the user. Look at the transparency we built. These are subtle, but it will come in handy deep and long in your society. These arguments, right? So end-to-end encryption, resident can lock. By the way, we can lock our Aadhaar. That means if I lock Aadhaar, nobody can use our Aadhaar. So it's very, very interesting things we did. Unique tokens for ensuring that every database has a tokenized version of the Aadhaar, not the Aadhaar number itself, not the permanent number. We actually give a token to banking. So if a bank A authenticates me and a bank B authenticates, I get two different tokens, by the way. Both digitally signed from the identity authority. Both confirming identity. but not the same token. So we did very interesting. They're all now in MOSIP. They have implemented much of this in MOSIP, by the way. And of course, Aadhaar took us to very, very interesting, the most brilliant use case of opening bank account. India went from less than 20% bank account to 80% bank account in no time. And also, most importantly, close gender parity. Women were the last one in our country who had any document proof of address and ID proof. Because husbands always almost had the property documents, utility bills, electricity bill, everything is in their name. Identity was the first time we completely took them, and women now look at the bank account. It's amazing, everyone. And also much of our benefits program is actually women oriented now, directly to the women in the bank account. Yeah. And we obviously, meanwhile, we also induced our 4G move, which was very brilliantly done again by the regulator, who brought a new player into telecom and completely changed the game. We went from 1 GB per month usage, mobile data per capita, 1 GB to 1 GB a day. Indians use 1 GB a day. Very, very cheap actually data. That's why people watch cricket and all. You can see boys are all walking around. Yeah. And then, of course, this was the biggest benefit. Why did people want ID? What is the use of having bank account if money is not there? Because if I am earning that much money, I didn't need your support. I already have probably ID. So this was one of the conundrums, right? So you had to create the first wave of money coming into the bank account. So we opened the bank account, it's called no frill account, and then we put G2P was the biggest use case to flow money into it. So money flowing in, today we have about 1,000 plus programs converted to direct benefits transfer, DPT, into the bank account, and savings of about 28, 29 or $33 billion last year. And the other solved even very, very interesting. Very quickly, lack of ID, cost of KYC, bank opening, obvious things that we solved. Lack of incentive. This is was a very critical thing. Most people miss this out because this is what I call it supply side thinking. If our project is build a DigiLocker or digital locker or build a payment, people will come. People don't come. You will be surprised how people don't come that easily. So you have to always wear a demand side hat. Why should people care about it? Why should your ecosystem partner care about it? Your bank care about it, or your government departments care about it? If you wear demand side hat, you will be surprised. Lot of questions start answering yourself. You will start answering. Invariably, we all fall into supply side trap because we are in control of supply because we are building. So we can build our product. We know we are engineers. We can do it. We can do blah blah blah, and then wonder nobody is using it, right? And then this is where the hardest part is really. So I think this, you can go to the next one. Thanks, Anushka. And this was the G2P biggest use cases, 3 use cases of identity, deduplicate beneficiaries in the government system, removing a lot of ghost removal is called ghost removal, not really a real ghost, of course, but for example, we had one of our states, we used to give free food to Brad Pitt. You know who Brad Pitt is? The Hollywood actor? Yeah. Yeah, we had Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, Clinton, American president getting free food in India, okay? I've seen actually database. This is weird. People just cook up random names because at scale, it's extremely difficult to go and figure out whether that person exists. What will you do? Say, sitting at the center, let's verify if that person exists. The guy who is going to verify, he'll take some bribe and say, exists. Because our country is like that. Nothing you can do at scale. Okay? Because at scale, everything start breaking up. But that's what very important design. So that was very important for us. And of course, most importantly, through Aadhaar payment bridge, our clearinghouse did the job. Aadhaar payment bridge, where identity became a payment address. You don't need bank account and all that thing. You can send money to an identity, and we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow as well. Okay? And we have about so many central programs, 600 state program, all using this. Yeah? Thank you. And of course, and this is very, very, very simple and most important for us we talked about much of this. This was one thing that we did not fall trap into is card issuance. Look, right? We definitely did not fall trap into it. It was a significant push in the country at that time because we were only 2G. We barely had phone. But we really played well into the future. We said, in future, we will have QR codes, digital verifiable credential, and smartphones everywhere. It makes no sense for 1 billion people to issue costly, expensive card. And we went with a digitally signed QR code. Oh my God, that was the best bet we ever made. Minimalism and cardless was the best bet we made. Okay, the two bets, if I want to say what is the essence of it, this is it. Okay, and next one. And then that takes us to credential. Identity was our first credential journey in the country. What is a credential? Any certificate or any claim. I am an engineer, or I am a high school graduate. I was born in this place, my birth certificate. I am married to so and so, marriage certificate. So every country today issues hundreds and thousands of certificates, trade licenses, and all kinds of issue certificate. Identity is just one of them, right? Driver's licenses, everything we issue, all kinds of things. How do you today? What is the issue? Issue is that you take these certificates and go to a bank. What does bank have to do? Re-verify the authenticity of that paper all over again. Is it even genuine? How do you know that you didn't print it out at home? I can put the same logo, I can put the same paper. Impossible to verify fake. Fake certificates are very difficult to figure it out. So what do? You do costly background verification or certificate. And the moment cost is imposed, the poor people can't, no use giving a $10 loan if you have so much verification cost on me, right? So I'll start saying no to poor people. And then they are left with the most low trust equilibrium. So a driver walks into a ride sharing app. Well, how do you think ride sharing company is actually verifying driver or driver's license? Nothing. Just looking at some card, hopefully it's correct. And you will say drive and show me, and maybe you can drive. Really there is no verifiability of anything. And what we have said is that we can extremely easy to convert these into what's called verifiable credential. It takes nothing for your country. If you don't know what to start with this. It's the most easiest and low hanging because everybody wants certificate and every citizen wants to use a certificate someday. Somebody or other is using a certificate. So this is the most citizen friendly thing you can do. Actually, make it verifiable. So the next layer, like a bank or a company or another department, don't have to re-verify the data all over again. Okay? And this also empowers the individual. And this is what we end with, right? Brilliant statement from Nandan last time, Nandan Nilekani, who is sort of CTO of India. He says DPI doesn't cost. It's not about deep pockets, it's about deep conviction. It's a way of creating those 7 tangram blocks or 5 categories of blocks that we have put out. Getting some of that going in your country, you can see the domino effect subsequently. So I stop there. Thank you so much. And we have brilliant setup subsequently. So if I open to questions, by the way, we have experts here as well. So go ahead. What's coming to your mind? What questions? How can you apply? Are there some questions about patterns? Anything you want to apply? You can even write down subsequently, ask as well, but I don't mind few questions right now, I think. Yeah, we have some mics as well, so that others can hear the questions. Yeah. Some mics. He's busy.
How much is political will an important aspect here?
Excellent question. So political will was very, very key. And for identity project, we did have top support, Prime Minister led project, then Dr. Manmohan Singh, earlier political regime. But everybody believed. I think India, we believed, by the time feature phone revolution, Nokia revolution kicked in, we realized digital is going to be big for India. There's no other way we are going to do anything at this scale. So there was already belief, something digital we have to do. But I don't think they intervened. The good thing was that you need political leadership to bless the contour of the project, but not micromanage. Okay, because because their election cycle, you can't get trapped into all that thing. But you should watch for it though. You should make sure that it's there. But we had, and the second regime, when Prime Minister Modi came in 2015 or 14, he also announced, within a year, he announced something called Digital India. And Digital India was a very broad vision. It was not specifics, thankfully. Okay, it was not specific. We will do this portal and all, not like that. Okay, vision is that how digital will empower people, how digital can take banking to villages, how digital can create health, education to villages, and what do we build. And that Digital India gave the bureaucrats, because political will was done, the bureaucrats some ammunition to say, oh, under the Digital India, now I can propose a project. And then people like us would get involved as experts, a small team, who would say, now that you have made up your mind, I'll help you think like DPI and not think like a RFP problem. Because you can't outsource your thinking. You have to think yourself, no? So, yeah, so that's why. Okay, yeah. Okay, a couple of, you come back. Whoever has mic, okay, go for it. And there's one mic here also as well. I'll come back to you as well, yeah. There, go ahead, please, yeah.
Thank you.
Do a time check, okay? Come here, yeah.
My name is Morgan from Zambia.
Yes.
Just how did you balance the need for, when it comes to digital identity onboarding, how did you balance the need for efficiency and simplicity with the quality?
Yeah.
There should be some minimal tools that you had given to the youngsters that you had sent out. So
Yeah.
how are you determining the quality of the input and the need for that efficiency? Thank you.
Brilliant question, absolutely brilliant. What happens when you use an ecosystem? What is the reason for a lot of times you believe your team has to do it? Command and control, large team, is actually quality. You actually worry about quality being diluted by third parties who may be in the villages who is doing. So we control quality through software. They could not do anything. There were 4 screens. So every operator, we have some details anyway, Vijay is also here. Every operator was given an Aadhaar number first before they can become a trained operator. That means if you are a bad operator, you have a permanent ID and you are under the rule, can be punished, right? So first we gave every operator. First operator was enrolled here in Bangalore because first operator didn't have a parent operator, no? Like Adam problem. So we created that. Then in the system, no operator could be onboarded without the other operator. So we onboarded operators and then we trained and certified, and the software was so absolutely productized, no customization, no nothing. We told them exact specifications of the laptop, computer, printer. They can buy it from a certified ecosystem. We didn't supply any hardware. But we told them what's the specification. And when the software installs itself, it will look for those specifications. And then it will say, yeah, we are ready. And first thing you have to do as an operator is that you have to Aadhaar authenticate to log into the software. That means you are using the same identity system to authenticate yourself into the software. Then in the software we built what's called telemetry. Telemetry is a mechanism which literally a small team of 5 to 20 people in the headquarters could see 40,000 stations. I told you 40,000 stations, 200,000 operators. We could watch every time they open the software, close the software, if the software crashes or if the software is how long it takes from one tab to other tab, all the metadata was actually measured. The telemetry was extremely powerful to know why are you taking too long for biometric? How are you trying 8 times? Normally on an average 4 times and all, you should be able to capture your fingerprint. But this particular operator is peculiarly doing. Or some night, somebody is trying to operate at night. We could do a lot of that remote, fully baked into the software. Software with telemetry, with observability, ensured quality. And you know one of the things we did? We gave every software, every operator, 200,000, every operator we gave a quality score record back to them. You are here and your average company score is this among your friends in the operator, and the country, at the country level, all operator score is 8.8 and you are at 4.8. You better improve. Very interesting things.
Uh,
After that, we can outsource because we have full control. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Zeko from Zambia. Just 2 questions. I see a lot of authentications being done. Are they free or there's a cost?
Yeah.
My second question, obviously India is large. From the infrastructure side, do you have a centralized approach or you have every province deploying the various systems?
Very good question. So first question answer, the first 4 to 6 years, we said 4 years, then later 6 years, it was kept free. The cost of authentication was absorbed by the government to increase adoption. First 4 years for sure, anyway we did. I think it went up to 6th year, if I am right, if I recall correctly. Then we introduced a toll pricing. That means it was not differentiated pricing. Everybody in the country, whether it's a private operator, bank, or a public sector bank, or a government department, you all pay a small utility fee. It was a utility charge, it was not a for-profit setup anyway. So it was a utility fee. Now there is a utility fee for every authentication and for every eKYC also. The 2 services, there is a utility fee. Everybody pays for it, okay, when they use it. Banks pay typically when they open. But they're not using it. Think about it. If they don't use eKYC and start opening a bank account, their cost is much more. So paying, I think it's 3 rupees right now. 3 rupees is one, whatever, quite a lot. 80 rupees is $1. So 3 rupees is quite cheap. Less than 5 cents maybe, 5 cents maybe, roughly that is what they pay. If they start doing KYC themselves without it, their cost is much higher. It's in $20. This is 5 cents. So why would they not use it? So it was priced to be a utility pricing. That's the first point. And the second point was federated question, whether the question was centralized or whether it was decentralized, right? So the system was centralized. That means IT system, technology was centralized because of the deduplication need. It was a nationally deduplicated identity. But enrollment operation, as I said, was completely decentralized through states and districts in our administrative hierarchy using local entrepreneurs, private entrepreneurs who are trained and certified. That's enrollment. Authentication. Authentication can be online, or completely offline in a decentralized way. There is nothing centralized about it. So the answer is that. Yes, please. Yeah. Mahesh, I'll come back to you. Yeah. I think there's a mic right there. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you had a question as well. You want to go first? Okay, sure, one of you. Yeah, then we'll come back to you, then to Mahesh. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Grace and I'm from Uganda. I am interested to know how you dealt with the population without smart devices for authentication. I don't see any mobile ID, neither do I see the use of USSD. USSD is big.
Yeah.
Where I come from, in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, we have it big on mobile money and other services. So I want to know how you, as such a population, manage to carry out authentication and
Okay, so authentication was done. For us, USSD was not a popular medium in India. It was not that popular. But whatever, that's where if you had introduced USSD, nobody would have used it anyway because we don't use it as a culture. It's not popular for some reason. But we used 3 types of authentication. One, paper-based authentication. You cannot take paper away after decades and decades of history of using paper. That means people will continue to use their ID card in the airport, railway station, employment, they'll take photocopy and all that thing, right? So the paper, what we do, we put a digitally signed QR code. And knowing that you will use paper-based. So that's paper-based authentication is very common, continue to be, even in 2023, people use paper-based authentication. Second, a kiosk or a touch point based authentication, where the Aadhaar holder, the identity holder has no device. But I walk into a bank branch and the bank branch has a point of sale kind of system where I put my fingerprint and authenticate. So that's called assisted authentication. And the third was OTP, one-time PIN on via SMS. SMS was very, very popular here. So everybody, and we are like a death by OTP in India. Okay, and like we send OTP for everything. Okay, we are good, bad and all. It's a very big habit. Now it's a good habit, means you have to play into the habit, not try to completely change the habit of the society, the +1 thinking I was talking. So we used OTP based authentication. And the fourth was self-service authentication, which is smartphone users. People like smartphone has a fully mobile ID, by the way. But initially smartphone was not that common. Even now, if you look at, it's a shared smartphone in the family, typically a man holding it, not women may not have it. So smartphone based is still early for us, but it is very popularly used now. You can show a QR code on a smartphone. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, then I'll come to that and come back to you. Okay, yeah, you go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much. The first question I think was related to what she has asked, because I was imagining that by the time you rolled out, you hadn't covered the whole country with connectivity. And therefore, you needed to think through how you could authenticate people that are not connected.
Correct.
But
enroll people without connectivity.
So the last question from me is, this idea of cardless is very interesting and important, because one of the key drivers of cost in national ID issuance and maintenance is the card.
Oh my God.
The card gets lost, replacement calls for a cost. The card there's quite a lot that is involved in. In fact, it accounts for people in jurisdictions where people have not acquired cards.
Yeah.
It is largely the cost.
Yeah.
How were you able to convince, especially the bureaucrats of government, that you're going to issue IDs, but they're going to be cardless? Because the most common implementation is physical card, physical card. How were you able to succeed with such?
Sometimes we wonder ourselves how we succeeded, but anyway. So I think the cardless was there because we had very strong, first of all, our leadership who was leading this, were very quite forward-looking folks. They could see through what the cost of the card, if we issued a card for 1 billion people, lost card, renewal of card, and then most importantly we asked, it's not the question of card issuance we asked. We asked the question, where is the card going to be used? If the card has to be used, you in a point of sale machine, no? And we asked the bureaucrats, in 40 years of payment card industry, 40 years in India, how many card machines have we put in? In Mastercard, Visa, all put together. How many card machines? 5 million. Is 5 million good enough for 1 billion people to authenticate everywhere? No. So we were making a very, very strong case. You can issue card. And if you are desperate to do some procurement game, but it's not going to be used. Nobody is going to use it. So we argued first saying, anyway we will need a cardless QR code based system. We need QR based authentication and paper based authentication, and smartphones are already on our way. That means you have to design for the future, not design for the past. In 4 years we saw exactly the same trend. Nothing you can stop from human aspirations. People will buy smartphones, see smartphone eventually, right? They'll get to it. So give card, we called it Aadhaar card, but it was not a smart card. We avoided the smart card trap using a QR code, signed QR code. That argument we made because payment industry had shown after 40 years that card reader was not there at population scale. So, and we had good leadership who would support, they were not interested in big procurement and all that thing. So that was okay. Okay, yeah, you go, quickly, and then we have Mahesh. Okay, and we might have to wind up. Okay, okay, or we have some
Thank you.
Tobago. Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Pramod, for that wonderful, enlightening presentation. Now, from what I gathered is that for everything that has to do with the banking and the government transactions, we've used the Aadhaar and the other credentials, right? Now, the other part of the puzzle that I see remains on the big tech companies. Like, how do you go about, if that at all is a strategy, to have companies like, say, Amazon, right, to get into your system for authenticating? Because by the look of it, it looks like we have used these digital public infrastructure for a governance purpose, which is doing excellently well.
And for private marketplace as well.
But how do you use this in future, let's say 5 or 10 years, to grapple with the algorithmic biases that these companies would come up with, Amazon's,
okay.
and how would you create a strategy that they would adopt this system and not have all these data, which is more than what you have? Like you said that you don't have a location tracking, but they would have that, right?
Yeah, they would have.
So how do you consolidate into that?
No, but I don't consolidate. Are completely independent. This is why if you put everything into one bucket and mix it up, you will not get any project live. You have to focus on task at hand. What's our task at hand? Make sure there is a powerful minimal identity for every individual in the country and they are empowered to use it. That means no restriction, your ID, your data, you use it. Now we can ask a second question we asked, is this ID only limited to government or market? And the DPI thinking told us, no, we should allow, because this ID is ID of the government, is ID of the people. If the ID of the people want a job in a private company, no. Are you saying that ID can't be used in a private company? Then why are you issuing ID to people at all? Right? It's a complete waste if you look at an empowerment point of view. Because they will use in both private sector and public sector. It's my ID, right? So we allowed that. Second policy. And we very clearly articulated in the policy. Aadhaar will not become the only ID. There will exist multitude of IDs that you can use today. Anonymous IDs, online IDs like Google ID. You can use any ID. It's your right as a citizen to use what you want to use. Now the third angle is the privacy or other monopolistic behavior or privacy of these large companies, big tech, nothing to do with ID. Independent question a country has to ask. What do we do if a large company starts monopolizing our economy? If they start collecting lots of data, is there a data protection? Is there a privacy bill? That's an independent question. We asked all three independently. That unbundling was the key. Otherwise, we will get confused and we won't get anything out. Okay. So, okay. Next one, Mahesh. Okay. And then I have to go there. Oh no, I have to get one from our friends from Tobago. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I have to, okay.
Okay, first of all, let me congratulate you for value-based, quite impressive approach and the inspiring speech. There's two fundamental concerns. The governance structure behind this.
Yeah.
Now, the story is quite impressive, but as practitioners, we know how difficult it is.
Extremely.
So, what's the governance structure behind this and the procurement approach? So, how costly is this exercise?
Yeah.
So, is it bearable for a nation?
Yeah. So, I think very quick question, we'll talk again. I think there will be much more times to discuss. Governance was very, very typical of a government setup. Not much change. We didn't try anything new. There was a secretary. This was hosted under what's called a planning commission. It was not under the Home Ministry, by the way. It was under an independent ministry. That was a good one. And we continue to create an independent authority, what's called identity authority. So under the legislation, now we have a law, and this additional secretary, just below one level below secretary, is the CEO of UID AI. They are government officers. And there are government officers below that, somebody who looks at authentication, somebody looks at enrollment, and somebody looks at data center. There are 3 or 4 senior VPs equivalent, but government bureaucrats. And then they have teams under them, and they work with an independent, typically independent third party, private companies for actual tech implementation, software implementation and data center operations. Okay, very, very typical. And so not much except we kept two things really well. Keep the organization very small. Not 100, the more people you have, the more mess you're going to get. Okay, so really keep it simple. Second, avoid procurement as much as possible. We could have procured 40,000 stations we were running, no? We could have procured 40,000 laptops, 40,000 scanners, 40,000 plus now 20% things will go bad. So you have to buy 20% extra. Then we supply to the villages and nobody uses and they say, sir, it's not working. Now what am I supposed to do? Instead, we said, no, we are not going to procure. Let the ecosystem agencies procure, but we can give a grant. If you want a loan, we can allow. At the country scale, we can negotiate with the bank and say you give some loan. But every time they enroll, we'll give you money back. So that means if you invest in a laptop, you can make the return of investment in less than a year. So we told them that, right? So it was a good thing. And the third thing was cost. It was actually $1.20 per person. Entire cost. In 13 years, 2009 to 2023, 14 years, all salaries, data center, operations, field operation, everything put together, we have spent $1.50 maybe at best. Yeah, per person, that's it. $1.50 in 14 years. Yeah, including our data center, salaries, people, everything put together. It's bloody cheap. I can tell you, okay, if you do it well. But if you go into, card and that and this and all that thing, you might. So it's a little bit of, I think that's why DPI thinking is about that minimalism and demand side. Okay, I'll go there and then okay, we can always talk. Okay, yeah.
I asked two quick questions. You spoke, one of your key base metrics is opening of bank accounts.
Yeah.
But bank to your laws, the audits and the data privacy. Is there something that you do public facing to convince the public that you are doing what you say you're doing? In other words, providing them consent, there are no data leaks, you're removing audits regularly?
Yeah, so the first part, central bank was very, very supportive. May not be that early, but by the time we got into second year, they were quite supportive in terms of understanding how Aadhaar can reduce KYC cost of opening a bank account. Because most of the argument they were making is that I cannot open a bank account because it's just too costly to operate a bank account which has hardly any money, right? So these are really poor people. So they have to argue for this no-frill account, and government subsidized that no-frill account. Finance Ministry subsidized that in the beginning to say you start operating. And what we saw today is that we have about 3,000 rupees or 4,000 last we know, an average balance in each of these banks, right? So it's, I think, quite a large balance we have now. So that means people get used to savings, people who get to leave the money there. All that happens in the last 6-7 years, we saw the balance going from near zero. They would immediately withdraw money initially to almost everybody saying, I can keep it in the banking system, right? So it's a very interesting, but initial subsidy was useful and central bank intervention was very, very useful. But the cost was very clear because without the paper, without electronic KYC, cost was $20, this is 20 cents. It's a no-brainer, right? Yeah, maybe that's it. Okay, I need to really stop. If I don't stop, we have brilliant speakers followed up. I can see them all sitting here and it's unfair to them, okay? Thank you so much. I'm around for next week.